to the John DePetro Show. Folks, joining us right now, so appropriate with its Labor Day weekend, is our friend from the National Right to Work Foundation and its president, Mark Mix. Mark, it's John DePetro. Great to have you on again, and happy Labor Day.
Thank you, John. Happy Labor Day to you. We may be celebrating a different way than other people, but it's a celebration of the American worker, and that's appropriate.
Mark, take us through. There are some bills in the Senate that everyone should be concerned about.
Yeah, first and foremost is the so-called PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which has already passed the House with no hearings and no testimony and is pending over in the Senate, that would first repeal all 27 right-to-work laws in the country, John. And these laws are really very simple. They protect a worker's right to keep their job if they decide they don't want to financially support a labor union. Those 27 states have done right well economically, and not only on an individual freedom front, but also from an economic standpoint. And I know lots of states up in the Northeast could use the economic numbers that right-to-work states are providing. You know, basically 5 times greater number of people employed, basically lost jobs in the manufacturing sector in the forced unions in states over the last decade, a 30% higher private sector growth in private sector employment. You know, the story is getting better and better all the time, John, that freedom works. And in those right-to-work states, that's where the economic vitality in the country is coming from. And so that bill would repeal those laws. It also would try to eliminate the secret ballot election for union certification. It would introduce secondary boycotts so unions could protest against customers of a targeted company for unionization, penalties for small business people, wipe out the independent contractor rules, think Uber and Lyft, and make them employees so they can be unionized. Shall I go on, John?
See, you know, that is exactly the type of thing. And this is also, since it is back to school, the teachers' unions have also been very busy.
Oh, my gosh. The president of the Los Angeles Teachers Union, Unified Los Angeles Teachers Union, did a rare interview with Los Angeles Magazine the other day. And the lead of the story is, you can recall the governor, you can recall the school board, but you can't recall me. That was the quote from the teacher union boss out in Los Angeles, who's basically held those children out of school, saying they've lost nothing, John. Don't worry. The fact that they're not in school, they've lost nothing. They've lost no opportunities. In fact, they have learned the definition of riot versus protest and words like insurrection and coup, and they've learned how to make self-sufficiency. They've learned those things by being out of school. This is a union official that holds her teachers out of classrooms and holds their children out of classrooms to fight for defunding the police, for millionaire taxes, for all these things that have really nothing to do with the educational system in Los Angeles. But that's no surprise. Union officials of the largest teacher unions across the country, like Randy Weingarten of the American Federation of Teachers, were basically involved in writing the regulations for the Center for Disease Control on how to open up schools again. I mean, and then interacting with the White House on that and basically overruling some of the recommendations that the CDC made. So, yeah, those teacher unions are pretty powerful, and we've gotten a really clear display of that over the last year or so.
Folks, we're speaking with Mark Mix, who is the president of Right to Work in the country. And Mark, under President Trump, I mean, I think we saw some gains, but it sounds like people should be paying attention that, you know, right now with the Biden administration, they certainly want to enable and make the labor unions far more powerful.
Yeah, John, and really that's not, I mean, you have to be a little more specific about what Biden's got in mind and what his administration has in mind. They're not talking about rank-and-file workers, because if they were talking about rank-and-file union workers, they wouldn't have put the pipe fitters and the operating engineers on the XL pipeline on the unemployment line, you know, shortly into the beginning of this administration. What they're talking about is giving radical union bosses dramatic more powers over individual workers across the country. I mean, when you talk about forcing someone to pay a union in order to work, that doesn't help the worker. That helps the union bosses. When you talk about eliminating the secret ballot election in favor of a card check, a coercive card check scheme, that doesn't help the worker. That helps the union official. When you talk about penalizing, small companies who are, barely making it over the last year and a half with allegations when there is allegations of an unfair labor practice charge to the tune of $50,000 or $100,000 $100,000. That doesn't help the workers. That helps the union bosses. When you talk about boycotting a business that has nothing to do with unionization except for they're a customer of a targeted company, that doesn't help any workers at all. That hurts workers and helps union officials. So that's what Biden's up to. When he says he wants to promote unionism, he says he wants to promote forced unionism, and that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Folks, again, we're speaking with our friend Mark Mix, National Right to Work. And Mark, what are some other things that people should be thinking about on this Labor Day weekend?
Yeah, well, you should be thinking about your pocketbooks and the tax money, because the Biden administration is dead set on using the so-called infrastructure bill that's now passed, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that has about anywhere from about 25 to maybe 35% of what we call hard infrastructure in it. The rest of it is kind of, regressive left engineering of our government. Then they need to worry about the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill that's coming down the pipe that talks about, giving union officials the ability to make union dues a tax credit. That means that taxpayers across the country will be paying union dues for all union workers across the country. They're talking about, as I mentioned already, Uber and Lyft drivers being designated as employees for unionization, which will basically wipe out that model. I mean, these are things that government can, when they put their finger on the scale and they start, creating this crony capitalism, and it's hard to say it that way because they're actually empowering, self-admitted socialist union bosses. They're giving them more power over workers and more power over taxpayers. And by golly, they'll spend whatever it takes to make good on Joe Biden's promise that he's going to promote unionism. He said it 3 times, so I said it 3 times. But what he really means is promote forced unionism.
Now, Mark, what are some of the other things that over the next few months that everyone should be watching as far as coming out of Washington?
Yeah, well, obviously the budget reconciliation bill, the $3.5 trillion, and then the idea of basically trying to change the Senate rules is another story that keeps popping up. That because they can't get the radical regressive agenda passed, they need to break the filibuster, change the Senate rules, and make the Senate a simple majoritarian body. This is a structure that has basically allowed Congress to be at least deliberative in passing or considering, radical pieces of legislation. So we got to keep our eye on that, and obviously they're very close. And then, of course, the courts. You have to look now. We've got the new news about the Supreme Court, and the anger's been piqued again, and so we'll probably hear about court packing, which is another bad idea. The last time they tried that was in 1935, and that's when we got our federal labor policy pushed through by Roosevelt over the original adjudication of it by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional. But he threatened to pack the court. The court basically switched their votes. 2 of the justices switched their votes, and now we have a federal labor policy that takes the rights away from states, which the Constitution said shouldn't ever really happen, especially in areas outside of those specifically enumerated by the Constitution.
Folks, again, he is Mark Mix, National Right to Work. Mark, great job as always. I will wish you a happy Labor Day.